Hello everybody, and welcome to WildEarth TV, where there's a little bit of upheaval in the land, and that's not only because of the wild dogs you see in front of us. I shall explain myself as we look at those magnificent endangered animals there. Brian is shaking his head. My name is James Hendry, and you are sitting on a live afternoon game drive safari, and that live sort of feel brings with it not only an amazing sense of that anything could happen, but indeed anything does happen. And we, Brian and I, Brian is on camera, we are stuck here at the wild dog sighting. This vehicle is totally immobile. So I'm going to give you the introduction. We're going to spend a bit of time with the dogs for as long as they are where they are, and then we'll go across to Brent, who's trying to find some lions, and we will try and fix this car. So you are in the Greater Kruger National Park, 2.2 million hectares of magnificent wildlife wonderland, here in the wilds of South Africa, the Lowveld of South Africa. Off to the west, the Drakensberg Mountains; to the east, the Rhyolite Mountains of the Lebombos, and heading out into the coastal plains of Mozambique and the Limpopo River. And we're on a little section called Djuma, and just to the west of us we also traverse a little section called Arathusa, about 1,500 hectares in total that we at WildEarth are able to traverse. And we've come to these dogs to try and sort of start off our safari, and unfortunately the vehicle sort of fell apart as we got in here. But at least we have a view of Africa's second most endangered carnivore. Beautiful animal. So like I said, on camera today we've got Brian, the thumb. He is looking a little bit morose because we obviously are not going to be able to follow these dogs when they move. On the other vehicle, like I said, we've got Brent and the inimitable Andrew the Aardvark, and in final control, which is our control room where all the brain stuff happens, we've got Tara and Louise, and working on the satellites and things like that we've got Eugene and various others around the world. And we must just apologize today for our break in transmission this morning. I think you hardly had anything from us this morning, so I'm very sorry about that. But you can see some of the highlights, and those were mostly from these magnificent little pack of wild dogs. We love to hear from you. Please remember that your comments and your questions are welcome all the time. Hashtag Safari Live if you're on the tweet, or questions at wildearth.tv if you happen to be on the email. And you are welcome to ask questions, you're welcome to make comments, observations, anything you like. It really is good to hear from you, and especially perhaps if you're a new viewer and you would like to talk to us, or maybe you're an old viewer who's a little bit nervous of asking a silly question. Remember, we don't have any silly questions. I have given some profoundly stupid answers in my time, but normally the questions are perfectly valid, dependent on the context in which they're given. So that's the story at the moment, I'm afraid. You're going to be with us until Brent can get into the lions properly, and maybe we can fix this vehicle. I do hope we can, because it will be wonderful to go following these dogs on the hunt. There are probably only about 3,500 of them left in the whole world. And Jamie, we are live. Just keep coming up via tail axis, you will see us. Copy, thanks. So this is just a little pack of 3, and I'm not sure, I don't think that I've seen this little pack before, and I think they're all male, and so they're probably what, as Brent said this morning, a dispersal pack. So 3 sort of year-and-a-half-olds who've come away, or year-olds who've come away from a pack as a group of males, and they'll go and seek out a group of females who've also come away from a pack, and that's going to be their general modus operandi, and that's how they'll form a new pack of their own. I think it's a little odd that they would disperse now, especially as the packs now need as much help as they can get. Most of them have got little pups at the moment, and they need as much help as they can get to catch animals so that they can feed the pups. So I'm not really sure why they should disperse now. Perhaps it's simply a case of there are enough adults in the pack for them to be able to survive, and these chaps are actually just becoming a cost to the pack, but I don't know. So they're all males. They just popped on from Arethusa this morning, and we had a wonderful, wonderful sighting of them. I'm very sad not to have been able to share it with you. Now the Latin name, and I think Brent has probably told many of you this before, he loves dogs and he loves their Latin name. Their Latin name is Lycaon pictus, and it means painted wolf. And this is the wolf of Africa. This is the only kind of wolf species or kind of wolf-like animal that we have here. We have a couple of jackals. They're the other dogs that we get here. But these are the only kind of pack dogs that we get in Africa, and they have a very similar social structure to the wolves that you get in North America and of course in Northern Europe. And that is that they're led by an alpha pair, and they kind of dominate all proceedings. They're the only ones that breed in the pair, and there's a very clear dominance hierarchy throughout the pack. Highly successful hunters. In fact, the most successful hunters of any other animal out here, and that's why it's a little ironic that they are so endangered. There's only about 3,500 of them left in the world, maybe only 2,500 actually at this stage. About 400 in the Kruger Park. That went down to 250 a few years ago. And so I was just talking about their success as hunters. They are able to achieve a success rate of about 70%. Now a lion's success rate is probably only about 20 or 30%, which means they only catch, these chaps catch 7 out of 10 times. A lion will only catch 2 to 3 out of 10 times, which is quite an interesting statistic. They did kill this morning. They killed a little steenbok, which for 3 is a decent sized meal. It's not a particularly huge meal, but it's certainly wonderful for 3 of them. And they will kill as often as they can, but unlike other animals that are perhaps more successful in terms of numbers and in terms of distribution, like a leopard, for example, they won't take carrion, so they won't go and scavenge foul-smelling, rotting meat like the leopards and lions and hyenas will. They do like to eat fresh meat, and because their hunting success is so high, they generally don't have to scavenge too much. That said, they will steal freshly killed carcasses from hyenas, especially sometimes from leopard and from anything else that happens to be around. But generally, a little pack like this will try and eat twice a day. So they'll hunt in the morning when it's cool, and they'll hunt in the evening when it's cool as well. And in the middle of the day, they lurk around like this. That's not to say they won't hunt during the middle of the day, but not a huge amount when it's hot. And they're essentially diurnal animals, so they don't operate at night. And that's because they want to try and avoid competition with the leopards and the hyenas and the lions and the other major predators of the area. So a bit like cheetah, they tend to hunt during the day. And interestingly, they are also coursers, just like a cheetah. So a courser, if you don't know, is a kind of an animal that goes after, it sort of chases after animals without bothering to stalk them. So the idea, coursing means to run a long distance. Whereas the cats, of course, are stalkers rather than coursers. So they'll get up real close before having a big leap at them or at their prey, and the dogs will just sort of start running after their prey, and their prey often don't even bother to alarm call. They just run like hell because it's really quite a scary thing. These dogs are amazingly fit, and they will be able to keep up with just about anything and bring it down as the case may require. They really are magnificent animals. I'd love to get you a different angle. If you've perhaps just joined us, you find Brian and I stranded where we are now. A little pin has come out, I think a little pin has come out of the gearbox, and we need some fairly major mechanics to put it in. At least we managed to get into the sighting with the dogs before that happened, though. And quite interesting, the dogs are the second, I mean they're highly endangered, but they're the second most endangered carnivore in Africa. The first being something called the, Brian, any ideas? No? The simian wolf or simian jackal, and it's a jackal, just like, or not just like, but very similar to our black-backed or side-striped jackals, and it lives in the Simian highlands, so in the Ethiopian highlands. Beautiful red-colored coat, lovely animal, but it doesn't have anything like the kind of, I don't think, majesty or social structure of one of these dogs. So it lives just like the jackals here. It'll scavenge a bit, eat a few birds, crack a few eggs, eat some termites when the need arises. If we don't leave here very soon, Brian, we're going to have to eat termites for dinner. Right, we're going to go across to Brent, who seems to be with the lions, and he's got a bit of a tragic story to tell you. So I hope you enjoy that, and with any luck, we'll be back with you mobile in a little while. Good luck with the lions, and I'll see you later.
Welcome on the Sunset Safari, everyone. My name's Brent, and I'm going to be your guide. I've got Andrew with me on camera, and I'm sure James has covered the rest of the introductions. So I'm sure a lot of you have heard, and probably a very sad day for a lot of you, that one of the Nkuhuma lionesses was killed by the Birmingham Male lions last night. And they were found on drive this morning, and one of those Birmingham males was still feeding on the carcass of the lioness. So I know it is very, very sad, and a lot of you will be mourning. I'm not 100% sure which lioness. There was some speculation it was a sub-adult, and we have got hold of Torchwood, and Torchwood have been incredibly gracious and given us permission, special permission, once-off permission, to come through and have a look at this sighting. So we are actually sitting here right next to the lioness. Unfortunately, it is one of the adult females from the Nkuhumas. I can't see any very distinguishing features now, but I am going to go have a look. I understand that a lot of you might find this very, very upsetting, but we do have to understand that this is nature, and it is a natural progression when prides are taken over by new males. This does happen, and it happens all over Africa on a regular basis. It is very sad, but we are here to observe nature in all its facets, whether it be sometimes for us quite difficult to understand. So I'm just going to jump out of the vehicle, and we're going to go have a look at the carcass a little bit. I'm not going to move it around too much. The Sabi sands are here, so when something like this happens with the current TB situation around, they will take some samples from the carcass, and they're going to move that, give that through to the state vets so they can do testing to see if there is tuberculosis present and whether it is affecting the animal's health or whatnot. Obviously, she has died from bite marks from the male lion. I'm going to try have a look at that now. I actually haven't even gone and had a close look yet. We've just got here. We don't have much time here. We don't want to impede the Sabi sands and the state vets in doing their jobs, so we're going to do this as quickly as possible. So it's quite difficult to see what's going on. It looks like the actual fight took place probably around here. You can see there's quite a big scuff mark here, and there's quite a lot of paw marks, and it's happened on very hard ground and rocks, so we can't see too much of what's happened. So the lion has opened up the chest cavity of this lioness. He has fed a little bit, but her heart is still intact and her lungs. From what I can see, there looks to be quite serious puncture marks and bite marks here on the shoulder. Let's have a look around the head and the back of the neck here, without actually sort of really going into sort of a skinning thing. It's going to be very difficult to see where the animal was killed. They've obviously got incredibly thick muscles and under the hair, so it does make it quite difficult to have a look. But as you can see, I don't know if you can see that there, Andrew, the paw.
Yes.
So you can see, there we go, that lioness's paw, the same size as my hand. You can't actually see this, unfortunately, so I'm going to have to explain it to you. I don't want to touch the carcass too much. Obviously, lots of nasty parasites on an animal like a lion, but her claws are actually still extended out, so she obviously died with them extended out, and they are broken. So I'm quite sure she did give a very good account of herself. And as I say, I know this is a very, very sad thing, and obviously we're not going to go too close and stuff. It is a bit gruesome and gory, but it is a very sad thing, and I know a lot of you have watched this pride for many years and will feel a special bond. But this is natural lion behavior, so it is quite sad. I'm going to move away now and let the guys come do their work, and we're just going to stop a little bit up the road away from the carcass, and we can chat a little bit more. And again, another really big thank you to everyone from Torchwood who's given us special permission to come through here. And we do spend so much time with the Nkuhuma pride. Even it is sad, we must rejoice in their deaths as well as their births, and must remember that this is natural. And this is one of the things about spending so much time out here and spending so much time with these animals, is that unfortunately occasionally we do get to see different things like this. As sad as it is, oh, there's a big hole. It is nature, and we mustn't think of it as a very sad day. We just must think of it that we're very privileged to be able to have spent much time with that lion on. And we must look at the positives of a coalition like the Birmingham Males coming in. At the moment, obviously, the negatives are the most apparent. Kill the Styx cubs. I think this is so we must look at the positive. So the positives of this, we have a potential coalition of 5 male lions coming, even though the next few months is going to be pandemonium, and there's more than likely, unfortunately, going to be a few more deaths. But the nice thing about having such a large coalition of males coming into an area is they are going to, beyond this very, very panicked time that we're going to experience in the next 3 months, they are going to bring an incredible amount of stability for a much longer time than a smaller coalition or a single male. So having 5 males could put 5 to 6 to 7 years stability, where there's a coalition of 2 or 3 males, or even of 1 male, might not last that long. So I know it is very sad, but we've got to look at the positives out of this. If the Birminghams do take over what is currently the Matimba's territory, they will probably be able to control this territory for much longer. And once the prides accept these new males, they will sort of come into a really nice long period of stability when we'll probably have quite a lot of cubs around, and it is a good time for the prides to grow under a sort of good guardianship of 5 big male lions. It is an absolutely fascinating time to be here, and the fact that we are able to film even a tiny bit of it and live is an absolutely incredible thing. And I'm a little bit sad about seeing that Nkuhuma lioness. I've spent so many wonderful hours with them, but I do understand that it has to happen for the sort of next phase to come. Excuse me, I'm going to have a quick sip of water. Quite hot here today. But I'm sure you guys have got lots of questions, and I'm going to try my best to field those questions through the drive today. So I know a lot of you are going to be quite worried about what's happening, and Elise and Brian have sent through some questions. Elise would like to know, does she have cubs? Elise, not to my knowledge. I haven't seen any of the Nkuhumas mating with any males recently. That's not to say she might not have, but she currently didn't have cubs, and obviously without opening up the stomach and having a look at the uterus, we can't see whether she was pregnant or not. But I don't think so. And Brian was wondering whether it was the female we'd seen mating with the Matimba males earlier in the week. It is not. It's from a different pride. That female was from the Styx pride, the one that was mating, and this female is from the Nkuhuma pride. So I initially heard it was one of the sub-adults, but as we could see there, it was a big adult male, adult lioness. So it's going to be interesting to see which of the lionesses. We haven't seen the Nkuhuma pride for quite a while. I think the last time we saw them, well, I'm trying to think the last time I saw them, was probably before I went on leave. And you did spend quite a bit of time with them, with James and Jamie and Scott, I think, on Arethusa, where they killed a buffalo. We are quite far from there now. And I was also wondering, we didn't really see them in Arethusa. I've only seen them in Arethusa once. Were they possibly moving a little bit further to the west to try avoid the Birminghams who are coming in from the northeast? But as I said, it is an exciting time. And these type of things happen, so there is very little we can do. And we must remember, we're not here to get involved in the animals' lives. We're here to watch them and observe them in their most natural capacity. So as sad as it is, there's nothing we could have done about this. So it is, a lot of people think it's quite unusual for a male lion to kill a lioness, and Marisha is wondering that exact thing. I'm sure it is actually not. During these very big power struggles and takeovers, you must realize that those females have those sub-adults who do belong to the Matimbas. So they are not at an age yet where the Birmingham males wouldn't kill them. So the reason that they probably killed her is they probably called her off and she didn't show enough submission, and there could have been a fight ensued. And quite often with male lions, they're still quite young and they can be very aggressive. They're not quite aware of how strong they actually are, but it does happen quite often. And what this does do as well, it sort of sets a bar or a standard for the rest of the pride. But if we look further back into lion stuff like this that I've seen before, if we go to the Mapocho coalition, which is a very famous coalition, when they took over that sort of central swathe of the Sabi Sands and up into the northern regions here, they massacred many females. I think they wiped out almost entirely the whole Carson town, and I think they killed 6 lionesses there. They killed 4 lionesses from the Ottawa pride. So I think they killed a lioness or 2 from the Tsalala pride. So it does happen, and it isn't as unusual as you would think. And it is just part of lion dynamics. So you would think that if the Nkuhuma pride did come up across with the Birminghams again, they would be a little bit more circumspect in how they reacted. So I actually gave Craig a phone call after drive to find out exactly a little bit more details of what happened this morning. So off to the east of us here, the Birmingham males are on a buffalo kill. That buffalo was killed by the Nkuhuma pride, and from what I know, some of our viewers were actually there and we got to witness that. So some of our viewers who were visiting the Sabi Sands were there and got to watch that. So they killed that buffalo. The Birmingham males then arrived on the scene to chase them off. Apparently at one stage, Junior stood up and walked towards the Birmingham males, which is not a very good idea, Junior. And he stopped a couple of meters away and they sort of had a stare off. And then the other lions arrived and Junior and the rest of the pride skedaddled. So I'm not quite sure. I think they ran further north into Buffalo's Hook behind me. And the Birminghams have now taken over that carcass. So there is going to be a lot of this type of behavior over the next months, but it will be fascinating to watch And as I keep saying, I know it's really sad, guys, but we do have to remember this is just nature taking its course. So I'm just going to describe what's happening behind me. The Sabi Sands guys are loading a piece of the carcass into the back of their vehicle, and as I said, that carcass is going to go off to the state vet so they can run tests. And not only they will be testing for TB, they'll be testing for other diseases that felids might get, as well as general health and things like that. And even though she has died, she is still imparting really important information onto the scientists that could help with lion conservation in the future. And obviously we saw there that the rib cage had been opened and one of those Birmingham male lions had fed off her. Not very much, but he still did. This again is not unusual. I've seen male lions completely eat lionesses that they've killed. They're big, and then obviously there's a lot of other animals that might feed. And Deborah from Canada is wondering, will a leopard feed off that carcass? Very unusually, it would have to be a very, very, very hungry leopard. So let's take a male leopard who's past prime, doesn't have a territory, and is being pushed around and trying to hide away from other males. That is the type of leopard that would feed off this carcass. So hyenas would definitely, given the opportunity. Sorry guys, just waving goodbye to the Sabi Sands. They have departed now, and we're probably going to do the same in the next little while. As I said, we got very special permission just to come across and have a quick look at that carcass. So a lot of you are wondering whether it's the amber-eyed lioness. Unfortunately, I'm not able to tell. The carcass obviously has quite a lot of scratches and bites all over, and I didn't want to physically touch and open the eyes and stuff like that without having latex gloves at my disposal. There's a lot of parasites on a lion carcass, and so Junior did survive his encounter with the Birmingham boys this morning. He hightailed it with the rest of the Nkuhumas. I'm quite sure guys will try and look for them this afternoon as they ran north into the Buffalo's Hook. So as the game drives get going, I will keep my ear out and keep you guys informed if there is any other news on the Nkuhumas, the rest of the Nkuhumas, and possibly what's happening with the Birmingham boys. So guys, we're going to try and meander a little bit. We do have to move back towards Juma now. As I said, another huge thank you to Torchwood for allowing us special permission to come through here to have a look at this. So guys, what we're going to do, obviously this is quite a long way out of our normal traverse area, so the signal can be a bit spotty, but I know we had so many gremlin issues this morning, but we did record a lot of what we saw. So what we can do for you is show you a nice clip of what happened with those wild dogs, because I have to go through an area where we're going to lose signal, and I'll be back with you just after that. more imposing than the Birminghams, but unlikely. It is looking quite likely that the Birmingham coalition is probably going to take over this general area, but obviously you can never say that for sure. And with these things, it's not an instantaneous process. Sometimes it can take many months, so there's still time for the Matimbas to rally, but I do think at the moment it is looking quite inevitable that the Birminghams will take over. Oops, sorry, I'm having a little bit of earpiece issue that's falling out there. So it is going to be fascinating, but I mean, I've seen with the Mapoko, the original takeover took probably 5 to 6 months before they actually were completely fully dominant. A lot of the lion prides will start trying to avoid and run and duck and dive to get away from them, but I think eventually they will fall under the Birmingham's control. So they are now definitely living up to what James has been calling them, the marauding young males. They are now definitely in full marauding mode. They will be taking quite a lot of confidence from chasing the Matimbas off that initial buffalo carcass. So it is sort of possibly towards the end of the Matimbas' career, but I'm quite sure we still will see them a few more times in the coming months as they possibly try to hold on to the last little bit of their territory. I've been quite fortunate in all the time I've spent in the bush. I have been present for a few pride takeovers. One that's most relevant to us in this area is the Mapokos in the central Sabi Sands. That takeover was a particularly bloody one with lots of dead lions all over the place, and out of that came a very famous story, and I know there's now been a documentary made on the life of the Mapokos. And my favorite Mapoko out of that coalition was one called Mr. T. That was what the sort of most nice people called him, but the trackers and some of the rangers there, or more the trackers more than anyone else, called him Satan. And due to probably something very similar what happened with that Nkuhuma lioness, he was a little bit different possibly. So they were sort of in control, but very newly in control. He was found mating with an Ottawa lioness, or the older male, sorry, I can't remember his name, Kinky Tail, I think his male, he had a very kink in his tail. He was mating with an Ottawa lioness, and Mr. T, or Satan, arrived, chased him off, killed her, mated with her corpse, and then ate her entirely, leaving very little left, just the skull and some bones. So it does happen, and obviously it didn't go to that degree with the Nkuhuma lioness, but it can happen. Oh, a second here, sorry. And that is probably the most interesting, and the one I spent quite a lot of time with. I have seen numerous lion takeovers in Botswana, but being in a really, really big area with very few vehicles, you don't get to know about what is happening as much as you do in the Sabi Sands, where we have concentrated amount of vehicles following these animals on a daily basis. So even if we miss something, the rangers next door will be able to tell you. Whether it's in Botswana, the rangers next door can be over 100 kilometers away, so it's a little bit difficult. But it is very good. I'm just about to go through a dip, so we might experience a little bit of signal breakup. So I do apologize if that does happen, but we'll be through it very shortly, and we'll continue on with our discussion as we get to the other side. So I did mention that the Sabi Sands took away the carcass, and I'm sure quite a few of you are wondering if this is standard practice. At the moment in the Kruger, if they do have the opportunity to actually get an almost intact carcass, it is sort of standard practice. It is to run various tests and whatnot on, and most of the time when a lioness is killed in the bush, it isn't found very quickly, and the hyenas and other lions and vultures completely decimated. So it is sort of standard practice, and it is a good thing if we think about it, even though personally I would like myself always to just leave things, but we do need to have that information on lions and on their genetics and on the diseases, because lions are under threat at the moment throughout Africa, even though we are very lucky to be in an area where the lion population is very, very healthy. But in other parts of Africa, not so much. So as much sort of information as we can gather about the genetics and possible diseases and threats to lions outside loss of habitat and poaching, it is a really, really unique opportunity, and it is sort of, if the opportunity is available, the state vet will definitely take on that carcass, and it'll probably, some of those specimens will find its way off to Ondersteput. And those who are not sure what Ondersteput means, it actually means under the hill, as a direct translation from Afrikaans, or under the Put in Afrikaans is sort of where a river valley cuts through a mountain, and it is a huge veterinary facility. It's one of the best in the world, and specifically when it comes to wildlife, it is possibly the best, or African wildlife in particular, and all sort of wildlife. It is probably the best institution in the world, and they do a lot of research there on different diseases that affect wild animals, and they probably find a lot of the carcass or pieces of the carcass or samples will go off to Ondersteput for study. So those ellies were around this area when we came through, so we're just gonna move slowly through and see if we can find them. I might just stop and listen a little bit further down the road. So where that carcass was, there was very hard ground. It was actually on stone on the top of a granite outcrop, so almost impossible to see tracks. And Gail, BJ, and Trisha are wondering a few different things. Was she alone? Would the other lionesses have come to her defense? And unfortunately, none of us were there. There were no vehicles there when it happened. It happened sometime last night. So unfortunately, we cannot say for certain. I could not see any sign of any other lionesses there. That's not to say they were there. As I said, it's on a very rocky ground, so we wouldn't have seen any tracks. But she was probably with the pride, and they might have run off, and she might have been cornered. In certain circumstances, the pride, other females in the pride will come back and help defend against the male lion. But from what I could see in this circumstance, they didn't. Unfortunately, with a lot of animals, survival is the most important thing that instinctively they just have to do. And I think in that case, 5 male lions storming at you, one of your pride gets sequestered off to the side, survival instincts would kick in, and I think the rest of the pride would have hightailed it out of them. Okay, I can see if these ellies were just over here. They might possibly have moved off towards the Juma waterhole. So any zoomies, let me know if they possibly have moved off to the Juma waterhole. Ah, there they are. No, I think there's some buffalo and elephant. I thought I saw an elephant beyond the buffalo. Let's have a look. We will get back to the lions, I'm sure, at some stage later in the show, but let's have a look at what's in front of us for now. Looks like a nice big group of Dugger boys or buffalo bulls. Hello, gentlemen. Oh no, it's a breeding herd. So it looks like a small little breeding herd. I'll just get Andrew to focus in. We can see there's a little calf over here. Just gonna get past the bush here. You see, I think you can only see one cow. I got two cows and a calf. The rest seem to be buffalo bulls. I know there's another suburb out there, so it looks like a little breeding herd. We're just on the periphery where there's a few more buffalo bulls. Difficult to say how many there are here. There could be quite a few more up in the bush up ahead of us. Hello, little man. Oh boy, Andrew, you ready for the flies?
Can't wait.
I think I need to make some alterations to my hat and get some of those Australian corks on it as it gets warmer and the flies start coming out. Just bear with me a second, I'm just going to call this in on the radio quickly. So we will go up ahead a bit. There does look like to be quite a little bit of dust, so this might be quite a much bigger herd than what we're seeing, and we're just sitting right on the edge. And obviously we've been hearing a lot about lions catching buffalo. And at this time of the year, when the buffalo are forced to travel quite long distances between food and water, they do lose a bit of condition, and it makes them that slightly less slightly less dangerous than they are sort of in the height of summer, well fed and well watered. Stations is a small Hlambe of Nyari on Gari cut line, slowly heading north towards the Buffelshoek boundary. So let's move on up ahead, see if there might be a couple of hundred around the corner. So unfortunately, it sounds like James is having a bit more trouble than he initially thought, and it's possible that you might be stuck with me for the remainder of drive, and the Wendy will go see the car doctor to try rectify that before the sunrise safari. So maybe not. Oh, there we go, there's some more. So they're definitely more than we originally thought. You can pan across here, Andrew, as we go past the side of this herd. Ooh, nice big herd. Definitely a couple of hundred. sure this is a much bigger herd than I thought it is. I'm just going to find somewhere where we can get in here and get ahead of them. Stations collection. This is quite a large herd of buffalo. Slowly mobile north towards Provincial boundary to the west of Gari Cut Line. That was a good one. That was a very whippy little branch, and it got me right on the cheek. I think we're going to get a welt there. How's that look, Andrew?
Can't see anything. Yeah, a little bruise.
I think it's going to start coming out a little bit later. Oof. Evil little monkey orange. I really do love it when the buffalo gives that sort of down their nose look at you. Always sort of looks like you owe me money. A nice bull giving it to us at the moment. Definitely like a debt collector stare. So thanks very much to Don, who's actually just let me know that these buffalo were actually at the Nkuhuma Dam cam just before we went live on the LiveSafari. Obviously we were nowhere near. There we were all the way down in Torchwood. So I'm sure these buffalo are quite happy. All the regular or known prides of lions are really far from here at the moment. So nice peaceful night to be a buffalo, not being harassed by lions. You can see they are quite spread out as they're feeding at the moment. I mean, they probably spread out over about 500 or 600 meters through this bush. Yeah. Having a little head scratch with the bush there. Buffalo cow obviously got an itch behind her horn there, and you can see how she tries to get the branches right under behind her horn between her ears. Probably some irritating ticks. And you quite often see buffalo walking around with sort of additional, see there you go, how she's got it into that spot. I'm sure it must be quite itchy having things in that area. It's amazing how you can just hear them moving through the grass. Here comes the next debt collector stare. Popped around the bush and he's like, oh, what are you looking at? No. It seems to be a high percentage of buffalo bulls with this breeding herd, and that could just be because we're on the peripheries, and quite often you'll have more buffalo bulls on the edges than sort of in the center of the herd. and that is obviously a defense mechanism against lions. Well, it looks like a bunch of them are going to come out into the open on the roads. Let's go have a look at them there. Cow and calf towards us. Hello, little buffalo. The buffalo calves have got a very unique way of feeding, obviously, because especially at this time of the year they are mobile a lot, moving between food and water, and buffalo calves are one of the few calves or animal calves that are able to actually feed while on the move, and they'll actually walk directly behind the female and suckle between her legs. Oh, there's a guy with an impressive hairdo. Almost looks a bit funny. Very large boss on that young buffalo. He is going to be a beastie when he's older. So obviously, when we look at buffalo, you can see the male's got those huge bosses. Those huge bosses. And very developed knob. Let's have a look if we can have a good look at one. And obviously the females don't have that. And it's quite an obvious reason why they have different horns. The females don't have to compete for mating rights, whereas the males do. So that's why they've developed these big, strong bosses that they can fight off the other males to get the rights for breeding with the females. There you can see, most definitely a male, a very developed boss. We're going to let these buffalo continue on. They're very close to our northern boundary now, and I'm sure they're going to cross shortly. And we're going to continue looking for those elephants that I saw earlier, and then maybe go try to follow up on the wild dogs a little bit later. So not the biggest herd of buffalo we've ever seen. I'd probably guess around 150 or so. Nice to have them around though. They are going to be moving quite big distances at this time of the year between water and food. So we will be seeing quite a bit more of them as it gets drier, and these last little water points become incredibly busy hubs of activity for both predator and prey. go, little one. So there's one of quite an important bird if we're tracking. Have you got him there, Andrew? So we have a little Cape turtle dove there. So when we're tracking animals, dove tracks are one of the tracks we look for on top. If they are on top of a lion or leopard track in the early morning, it means the track was from it during the night. But if the lion or leopard tracks are on top of theirs, it means they are very, very fresh. And apart from early morning, they're also very active on the late afternoon, and they do really like to walk on these roads. So we do have quite a lot of tracks of them, and they're a very important indicator species for us to the age and freshness of tracks. If we have no luck with these ellies, you might have moved off, and I can't see any tracks here. We were following those male leopard tracks first thing this morning, and they went into the drainage line in front of Uyotela camp, and they did not come out. So we might just do a little squiz around there, check the shortcut through to the Gallagher waterhole, and see if we get any luck there. So just to keep you updated, I just got a message through from James and Commander Bond and the crippled Wendy, and the wild dogs are still lying up doing nothing. So I think we're going to take this opportunity now while they're sleeping to see if we can possibly sneak a leopard in there or some ellies. So we're going to cross across very quickly to the J and the J's, to James and Jamie. And James is actually in a bit of a compromising position. So we'll let you have a look what they're up to, and we'll be back a little later.
We are. You'll find us being towed back to the workshop. Problems, of course, with the gearbox. Absolute disaster. No idea what's the problem. I've been lying on the ground. I have grass, burrs, spikes, thorns, tick bites, and various other unsavory things in various parts of my, well, nether regions, really. Still have no idea what's wrong with the car. I'm covered in grease, which makes me feel quite manly. What doesn't make me feel manly at all, of course, is the fact that I'm being towed by young Jamie there, who's, well, she's not a large lady by any means, and she has rescued me from the nastiness of breakdown. The wild dogs are still where we left them, and I'm not sure what they're going to do at the moment. They're just lying peacefully in the shade. They didn't react to us at all as we lay about on the floor playing with the grease and trying to make things work. So that's the update from Wendy. We have seen an elephant, and thankfully he didn't react too adversely to us going past like this. I'm going to put my earpiece in case Tara wishes to speak with me. There's lots of dust flowing onto my face. Can't hear anything at all. Right, there we go, that should help quite a lot. So I believe that lion is gone. Can't have been marvellous, but a very sad occurrence, and as we've said over the last little while, something of a nastiness, these pride takeovers, and very difficult for us to handle. And I mean, you know, when the Majingalani lions came into this area, they did this, not the Majingalani, the Mapokos. when they came in here, they did a lot of lioness killing, and we don't really know why. We don't particularly understand the behavior. Yeah, perhaps she tried to defend them against them. Perhaps she didn't want those Birminghams around. Who knows? It's all rather miserable, I find. But a beautiful wild dog sighting nevertheless. Perhaps you'll go back there a bit later. It's still a fairly balmy 27 degrees or so. Okay, apparently poor old Brent's also having troubles. So thank you for your patience, and I'm sorry for this miserable day in terms of lions and in terms of signal. We'll link back to Brent, and I'll hopefully see you tomorrow morning in a little bit better state than we are now. Goodbye and thank you.
Welcome back. As you can see, there's a beautiful female giraffe walking in front of the Vuyatela Lodge. Isn't that a stunning sight? And she's moving up towards quarantine clearings at the moment. But isn't that beautiful, with that dust being kicked up in this beautiful late afternoon light? She might go visit final control. And then we have a beautiful little herd of zebra right in front of us. I'm just going to edge forward. I've got some very unfortunate news that I have to break to you guys, but fortunately it seems like the animals are going to play along for it. So we've got wonderful zebras here at the little water hole at Nkuhuma, and then on the opposite bank, it's that herd of elephants I saw earlier, and they're all feeding right in view of the camera. And unfortunately, the jigger is also now in need of going to a visitation with the car doctor. We will try to get her back on the road as soon as possible, but thankfully you have some elephants and zebras to keep you company while we try fix the problem on the jigger as fast as possible. Okay, so guys, we're going to spend a little bit more time here with me, with the zebra and the elephant here at the Nkuhuma waterhole. James is busy running around in search of a mechanic to help us, or a car doctor as I like to call them, as I think we need, our vehicles each have their own distinct characters and personalities, and we can't just have a mere mechanic working on them. Has to be a doctor. Something just gave this giraffe an incredible fright, and it's coming careering down the hill towards us. I'm quite convinced, without even going up there, I know exactly what did that. It would be, yes, looking at it now, there's someone walking between our camp and the main Nkuhuma camp, and that's what gave the giraffe a little bit of a fright. Well, we had such a, unfortunately, not live, but we did manage to spend an incredible amount of time with that small pack of wild dogs this morning. Ron from Scotland says he's heard that cheetahs will often hunt a lot during the middle of the day to avoid the other predators like lion and leopard, who might be resting or sleeping at that stage. And he seems to say, is this true? And also, he's noticed wild dogs don't really seem to take note of that. Oh, have a look at this little guy. He's got black socks. Ron, cheetah actually mostly hunt dusk and dawn, like wild dogs. The term for them is crepuscular. Both will hunt during the middle of the day if the opportunity does arise, but generally they prefer to hunt in the cool of the morning or the late afternoon. And we can see this young little zebra foal, all beset with oxpeckers, has tried to walk towards the muddy remnants of the Nkuhuma Dam and managed to get himself a new pair of socks, or 2 pairs of socks. And it can happen at this time of the year that animals trying to get to water in those muddy remnants can often sometimes get stuck in that mud and become an easy target for predators. And that zebra there just had a nice little yawn. Oh, there's another yawn. Oh, big yawn. And if we look over that zebra's shoulder, just there's also some buffalo bulls in the distance. So lots happening at the Nkuhuma waterhole. Very attentive zebra there, watching the giraffe, who's still watching possibly one of our ladies moving between the lodge and our house. So while we're looking here, we've got a wonderful comment from Henry, who says, if wild dogs are painted wolves, then surely zebras should be known as painted donkeys. Well, Henry, I think I definitely agree with you. A far more apt name. Unfortunately, guys, I'm going to now try shoot. James has located a car doctor who's going to try fix my issue on the jigger. But guys, what we're going to do is we're going to put on our highlights reel, because we had gremlins this morning, and we're going to show you all that wild dog action that Jamie and I had, as well as, guys, keep an eye on the Nkuhuma Dam cam. Now there's zebra and elephant, but hopefully we will be back with you as soon as possible. Welcome back. Unfortunately, we weren't able to find a car doctor, but James, the veritable genius that he is, managed to figure out what was wrong with Wendy, and we managed to do a bush mechanic fix. James, wearing a light colored t-shirt, looks rather the mess. Myself, I'm quite dirty, and probably the dirtiest of all three of us is the smallest, Jamie, who, believe it or not, is probably the most mechanically minded of all of us. So she was in there helping us, but Jigger, I'm afraid, is probably going to be out of commission for the whole of tomorrow, and possibly the first sunrise drive on Sunday morning, and hopefully by fireside we'll be up and running at full steam. But James is out again, so I'm just going to say a goodbye, and just another huge thank you from us here on the ground and the rest of the WildEarth team to Torchwood for allowing us that incredibly special permission to be able to go across and have a look at that carcass of the Nkuhuma lioness. Thank you again very much, guys. We really do appreciate it. And just to let you guys know, it is very sad. We did go have a look at Nkuhuma lioness that has been killed by the Birmingham boys, a new coalition of male lions. We're not sure which lioness it is yet, and we'll only be able to update you on that when we do eventually see the Nkuhuma pride again. I think they are going to be quite skittish for the next while with this happening, and then them being chased off a buffalo carcass as well. So thank you very much, those of you who waited. I know we said we weren't going to go live. We really thought James and I were sitting there like little baboons scratching our heads. We weren't sure what to do, but we did. James and Jamie, mostly I was just some brute strength at the end, managed to fix that with some really good thinking. So from Andrew and myself here, it's been really great. It's been a bit of a trying afternoon, but we did manage to get some great stuff, and hopefully James is going to keep you thoroughly entertained, even though he is thoroughly filthy for the last little bit of drive. And then between James, Jamie and myself, we will be sharing the Wendy till we get the jigger up and running. So have a wonderful time with James, and we will hopefully see you tomorrow.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to Wendy. Now, the good news of course is that Wendy seems to be mobile now, as opposed to immobile, which is what she was earlier. This is due to a number of amazing sort of bush mechanical effects. I have spent much time under the car with Jamie and with Brent and with Brian and with various others trying to fix things, and we seem to have come up with a solution. Now, I must maintain that I am absolutely no mechanic. I don't know what goes on in the bowels of a car like this, but we seem to have made some kind of what we call a shangan or bush plan, and we're mobile for the next little while. How long it'll last, I can't tell you, but hopefully a bit longer than it did earlier today. I think we're just going to take a gentle drive now around the place, see what we can find. I've heard some elephants over here. The dogs are mobile a long way away from here, and I'm not going to push old Wendy to get to them and go through the bush chasing after them in her current fragile state. Okay, I'm also feeling a bit fragile. I think Brian is too, and certainly Tara's nerves are probably frazzled from the ineptitude of the presenters and their mechanical skills. Right. So we're going to gently mosey on down here. I did hear some elephants there. Maybe we'll get to see them. Maybe we'll just enjoy what's turning into a very beautiful African evening. We've got 40 minutes left. You're welcome to it. If you have missed out, I'm very sorry. Please send us your questions if you want to. Hashtag Safari Live or questions at wildearth.tv, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. Here we go. And please excuse my rather, shall we say, frightful appearance. I don't believe that I shall ever be able to wear these clothes again. It was a lovely golden evening. And for those of you who weren't perhaps with us at the beginning of the drive, we had a bit of a sad time. Brent went across, we got special permission to go across to Torchwood, where one of the Nkuhuma lionesses was killed earlier today or last night by one of the new Birmingham male lions. This is quite a sad event. I'd say it's less common than it is common, but it's not totally uncommon. So one of the Mapocho coalition who came in here many years ago, they killed quite a few lionesses. We don't really understand the behavior. Pride obviously used to be 5 adult lionesses, 2 young sort of year-old lionesses and 1 young male. History doesn't relate what happened to the young male or where he is at the moment or where the rest of the pride is. I don't know where they are, but one of the adult lionesses was killed by the 5 Birmingham males, and we really don't know why. It's very sad, but it's just seems to be what happens. And I think we'll have quite a long discussion on those lions if you'd like to. Contino, John, your question is basically, was the fact that the Birmingham coalition of 5 is distantly related to the Matimbas perhaps have something of an effect on the interaction? I don't believe so. I think that's perfectly normal. I think it's perfectly within the realm of what happens with lions, because, you know, they don't, often male lions won't disperse that far from their natal pride. And so it's not unusual for them to come into contact with lions that are related to them, cousins or uncles or something like that. So I don't think that's playing a part in it. And just to keep you informed, the lioness was actually moved by the Kruger National Park. They come in, there's an extensive program to check on the status of TB, bovine tuberculosis, in the lions and the buffalo of this area. And so as soon as a lion is killed by whatever means, they will go and test them to see if TB is there, what the extent of the disease is, what effect it's had on the body, and that sort of thing. So the lioness is no longer there. She's probably in Skukuza now, having an autopsy. Kelly, you've asked how long have the Matimbas been in power? I actually don't know, to be honest. I think it's about 4 years now. Certainly, I have a 2011 map, thank you Louise, that indicates the Matimbas being dominant in this area where we are now. I think it is about 4 years. So they took over probably when they were about 6, quite young really. But there were 5 of them to start with, just like the Birmingham boys. In fact, I think there were 6. There may have even been 6. But there are only 2 in this area now. Right, we just got the last dribbles of golden light going down there. Enjoy some peace and quiet after a very hectic afternoon. Which is a beautiful shot of the sun leaving its last sort of liquid gold on the horizon. Now, I'll just tell you, it's always a good idea to do this. I heard some elephants just around here, and so I'm just going to have a quick listen and see if we can't hear them. And there goes the magnificent African sun. That seems to very seldom disappoint. So while much of this afternoon has been filled with a sadness and a bit of a disappointment, it's really nice that we can have such a magnificent sunset and sunrise just about every day. We also had a beautiful sighting of those wild dogs early on this afternoon, when I managed to get Brian and I stuck in the middle of the dog sighting. So not all bad news. Right, let's press on. I heard the elephants somewhere around in there, and so we're going to head on in there and see if we can't just spend a little bit of time with him before it gets too dark. And as you can see, This sort of late winter temperature is very comfortable. I'm in my shirt sleeves, in my filthy shirt sleeves. A little bit chillier down here. So if anybody's got an update on where the Nkuhuma Pride is, that would be very interesting. I suspect they're probably either headed into Kruger or north into the Manyeleti, but I'm not sure. But I think those Birmingham boys are making a serious play now for the Matimba territory. Just quickly pop in at the hyena den too to see if there's anything there. Shown in Pittsburgh, well, I'm not laughing at your question, I'm laughing slightly at the other one, which is a good one. Okay, nothing going on at the hyena den here. Sharon, you'd like to know, do wild dogs just eat meat or do they crunch through bones? They absolutely crunch through bones if they can, and especially in the small animals, even impala, they will eat everything, from the horns to the hooves. In fact, they'll probably leave the horns out, but they eat certainly the skull and all the bones. So they've got very strong jaws, but obviously something like a buffalo, I mean, which they won't kill, because they're not big enough, or maybe even a big wildebeest. The big bones, they won't be able to get their jaws in. They're certainly not nearly as jaw powerful as hyenas are, for example. And then, Sandy, a question about Steenbok, and you say, what is the population of Steenbok? They seem to be eaten a lot, but we don't seem to see many of them. Very difficult to gauge the population of Steenbok, and that's because when the population censuses are done, they're done from the air. And obviously small things like Steenbok are not very easy to see, but you do see them. Very healthy population of Steenbok, and what you find is, because they're so small, we don't see them that much, and they don't make herds, precisely so that they can stay hidden. I'm just going to go up here. And so, Sandy, they are in just about every little, they like to be in the sort of ridge crest areas, not so much the drainage lines. So areas like around that hyena den or around here, you'll always find a pair of Steenbok staying in sort of visual contact with each other. And there are quite a few of them. And they do tend to get smacked quite a lot, poor things, especially by Shadow, that wonderful female leopard who we share so much time with. She tends to make a real dent on the Steenbok population. Hello, Ruth. Just on the wild dogs and talking about them eating bones and what they're able to eat and what they're not able to eat. Ruth from Costa Rica, lovely to hear from you. Nice to hear from Central America. You want to know what are the biggest animals a wild dog can take down? On its own, not very big, but in a big pack, they'll take down adult wildebeest. That's probably about the size limit. I think there are one or two records perhaps of them taking down young buffalo or buffalo cows. and I think that would be the size limit. There may be a record of them taking down giraffe, but I haven't heard of it. So I think big wildebeest, big zebra is probably about the size limit for a big pack. That pack of 3 that we had, I would say impala is probably about the size limit for them. Checking for tracks. Nothing particularly leaps out at me. A sort of slightly a personal inquiry from Calgary, from Gail. Thank you, Gail, for your question. You say you saw an interview with me on television on a program called 50/50, and I was speaking 2 languages, English and another one. And the other language is a beautiful language, South African language called isiZulu. And many people have heard of the AbakwaZulu or the Zulu people. Their most famous sort of historical moment being the inflicting the greatest imperial defeat on Britain in 1879 at the Battle of Isandlwana, and it's a wonderful story. Anyway, that's for another time. You want to know what language I was speaking, so it's a language called isiZulu. Why I was speaking in 2 languages? 2 reasons. Firstly, my Zulu is not very good, so I do need to intersperse it with English sometimes. And secondly, that 50/50 is one of the longest running shows in South African history, and 50/50 used to mean in the bad old days, it used to mean 50% English, 50% Afrikaans, because those were the 2 official languages of South Africa during apartheid. Now obviously that is no longer the case, and we have 11 official languages in South Africa, and so 50/50 being on a multilingual channel has to intersperse different languages from around the country, and that's why we did that interview in Zulu. Very nice question. Most people in South Africa now, you have to learn English as the first language, and then you have to learn another African language, and that can be Afrikaans, it can be Zulu, Xhosa, Sepedi, Sesotho, Xitsonga, Shivenda, Sindebele and Siswati, any of those languages. And I think you may even be able to squeeze in French because of Francophone Africa, and maybe even Portuguese because of Portuguese Africa. So we have to do 2 languages, English and another African one. And in the old days when I was at school, basically my school years ended with apartheid. We had to learn Afrikaans, so I had to do that, but I also chose to do Zulu. And I maintain that it was one of the cleverest decisions I ever made. It certainly helped me learn to speak a bit of Shangaan, which I speak around here as well, and it definitely opens doors where previously there were obviously enormous barriers in South Africa because of our turbulent history. Thanks, Gail. Seem to be seeing any of these elephants anywhere. There we are, you can hear them. Either that or it's the car rattling, which is quite possible after today. I thought I heard the breaking of branches. Did you hear anything, Brian?
I thought I did as well.
They're just around here. I think there's another road here, so we won't take Wendy too far off road. I think we'll keep her on the road. Around the corner here. I mean, the one real advantage of not having any greenery on the trees, of course, is that you can see miles into the bush, where normally in summer we wouldn't be able to at all. while we go around to try and find these elephants, Dan, you want to know what was more embarrassing, being towed by Jamie or having thorns in my nether regions today? I think the thorns were infinitely worse. I was quite honoured to be towed by Jamie. You know, I'm a modern man. I try not to be emasculated by such things. Especially she did such a damn fine job. She was also under the car with me. In fact, she knew far more about what was going on under the car than I did. Oh, that's a nice smell. Very sweet smell in the air. You know what it smells like to me is the first flowers of a knobthorn tree. I can't see any knobthorn flowers on it. That is a knobthorn that Brian's showing you now. Sorry, I thought you were showing a knobthorn. That's a knobthorn, but I can't smell any flowers on it. Oh, see any flowers. Oh, that is lovely, eh? Mm. Beautiful sweet smell in the air. Very unwintery smell. Lovely. The knobthorns do have a very subtle, lovely, sweet scent when they flower, but this one doesn't have any flowers on it yet. Very nice. Now, question from Dan is quite an interesting one, you know. So often when I was driving guests, we had a number of female rangers at the lodges, and quite against stereotype, they're a bit like Jamie, who's, you know, she's a slight girl, she's not a big butch masculine woman, and people would say, but how can she manage to do this job, this manly job? And then I'd do something like this. If you watch my steering wheel here, I do it with one hand like I'm doing that, and say, well, it's really not that hard to drive a Land Rover these days, and then point out that although Jamie and her ilk are slight of frame, they have passed all the same tests that the men have had to do. They've had to work just as hard. In fact, they've had to work much harder because they've had to overcome various sort of sexist attitudes to women being game rangers. And the other thing I used to say is that I think they make excellent rangers because they're not fueled by testosterone like men are. So they're much more sensitive with animals, and they don't tend to take chances which would endanger animals or other people. So it's really quite nice to have Jamie on board. And if I have to be pulled by her every so often, well, you know, at least she's not going to lord it over me like Brent Leo Smith might, for example. Then it was a zebra, not an elephant. Hello, zebra. Don't worry, Wendy hasn't broken down, I've just turned her off. Just try and have a look at them as they go through sort of bush. And the interesting thing about zebra stripes, people will tell you all sorts of weird and wonderful, newfangled, crazy stories about why they've got stripes and why they don't. But if you see them walk through this kind of bush in this kind of light, this is when their major predators are starting to get moving. That's the lions. It starts to play tricks with your eyes. Now, naturally, these zebra are not moving at all. Oi! No, they're not moving. But what they do, the stripes start to play tricks with your eyes, and if you don't see in the same detail as we do, which lions don't, they see contrast much better than us, but not the same level of detail. And I think that this, there we can hear the elephants now. I should be able to find them now. Anyway, if you don't see in detail like we do, I think it must be very confusing to look at zebra stripes as they walk through the bush. Not elephant stripes, Brian. Okay, I can hear the elephants off to my right-hand side. So we'll see if we can't just get a quick glimpse before we have to hand you over to the highlights reel. It will be quite short today. A little bit quicker. They're in here somewhere. There's a little link road that goes around here. So far Wendy is mobile. Lots of evidence of buffalo bulls around here, bits of dung and tracks. And they'll come out in the evening like this and start to graze across the clearings. Balas. That's a very interesting question on the subject of Wendy and cars and why we choose the vehicles that we do in the bush. Joel, you want to know why don't we use an automatic rather than a manual or stick shift? Joel, there are a number of good reasons for it. Firstly, as you've seen, we've had to fix this thing today out here, and it's extremely difficult to do that with an automatic because they're a lot more complicated in the gearbox. And secondly, because we drive off-road a lot and in and around places like, you know, the drainage lines, we need to have extra control of the gears. And on some of the very, very new 4x4s with, you know, electronic traction control and that sort of thing, the computers can do as well as we can, but not in these conditions. They tend to break, the electronics break down very quickly in these conditions, and so we far prefer to have a manual like this, which we can select the gears properly, and just it's much easier. The simpler the vehicle out here in the bush, the better it is. Something alarm calling here. A couple of birds. Stop here and look at these zebras and see if I can't hear the elephants again. And I'll answer a question from Jamie about crocodiles. You say you're a huge crocodile fan, and do we get them in the reserve? We do get them in the reserve, but not around this particular area. They like the bigger dams and the rivers. That tends to be a better place for them to live. And the crocodile said that we've got the sand. Sorry. Oh, I see. Okay, and Jamie, you wanted to know if the crocodiles here were freshwater or saltwater. Well, they're absolutely freshwater crocodiles. No saltwater here. Jamie, we're about, as the crow flies, 200 kilometers from the sea at the closest point. So we're a long way from any salt water. So they're definitely freshwater crocodiles. Although some freshwater crocodiles can survive in the salt if they have to. Lots of alarm calling from drongos around here. And that zebra is definitely looking at something, but his mate to the right is totally disinterested. Look at the elephant. Elephants are just shouting further forward, so I think we'll carry on and see if we can't get a quick glimpse. Here we go. Wonderful to be out at the workshop and in the bush. The elephants are calling just down here. I don't think we'll pick them up on the microphone. Some upheaval there. impalas up ahead. Moving off towards the clearings for the night, so they can hopefully avoid the attentions of any predators. Oh, these elephants. I'm loath to go blasting off-road on Wendy at the moment. Stop and have a listen here. There they are. In fact, there are lots. There's one there. Can you see that one, Brian?
Okay.
And there are lots in front of us, probably on quarantine. We'll just have a quick look at that one there, and then we'll move towards the ones that I can hear, I think, on quarantine clearings, which is not far from here at all. Sorry, it's just getting a little bit nippy. Put my jersey on over me besmirched skin. So that's the one that was calling, or certainly one of them that was calling earlier. Alright, let's just nip forward a bit quickly before we have to leave you and see if we can't find the other two. So there he is, as you can see, beautifully disguised in the grey vegetation, because he is, of course, grey. Up here, it sounded like quarantine clearings. I think I'm just going to bomb off road straight towards them, but because it's clear, we should be okay. Shout if you see an elephant, Brian. Now I remember yesterday, I don't know if you were with us yesterday afternoon, but we spent a long time with a couple of herds of elephants with some big bulls, and those bulls will cause quite a lot of upheaval. So maybe that's why there's so much noise. Try and find these elephants. I'm just going to answer a few more questions on the lions. I don't know where these elephants are. Marissa, you want to know, you missed Brent's introduction, and you want to know, was the lioness killed after or before they killed the buffalo? They were on a buffalo carcass that the Birmingham guys stole from them. I would imagine afterwards, probably at the kill, but I'm not sure. I don't know that anyone saw it actually happening. Bizarre. They were shouting, I thought, from right here. Further towards the water, possible. Lovely smell of the potato bush. It's always so full of memory for me. While we're talking about the death of that lioness, Blair in British Columbia, you know, you've said that it seems counterintuitive and counterproductive for them to be killing a lioness. I couldn't agree more. And like I say, it's abhorrent behavior, but I have seen it before. And so I don't know why they do it, Blair. Junior should actually absolutely be the first target. But I really don't know why on earth they would kill a lioness. You're right, they should be looking to try and mate rather than kill lionesses, so who knows. It really is bizarre. I only think that these elephants were perhaps at the water here. See one? Brian spotted them. Lots of them. Beautiful elephants here. So Lois, while we get into this little elephant sighting where they've been shouting at each other very kindly for us so that we knew they were here, you want to know, you say surely with all of the efforts that humans make, or what impact does the fact that lions kill each other have on the efforts of humans to save lions as much as we are? Lois, it doesn't have a huge impact. They don't, you know, lions, you say the systematic way that lions kill each other. They don't kill each other in a systematic way normally. It's perfectly normal for them to you know, do some sort of killing when territories get taken over and that sort of thing. It is abnormal for them to start killing lionesses, certainly males, and why they have in this case, I really don't know, but it's not common. And so I think lions do kill other lions, but certainly not at a greater rate that we're trying to save them. They're far more threatened by things like habitat loss and that sort of thing. Lovely elephants just having a drink here in the fresh water, and some young bulls down in the mud. Beautiful herd. Beautiful, peaceful evening. You probably saw the lights as we came down of Vuyatela Lodge, just twinkling gently in the lovely dusk light. Beautiful time of the day. And they've come, it's quite interesting, you can see the herd has come to drink at this clean water. It's entirely clean water that they're drinking. It's pumped for, well, not for them, but for everyone, all the animals every day. And then the young bulls who are down in the mud. The young bulls who are down in the mud are doing exactly what a whole lot of bulls did yesterday, and that was to head off towards sort of the muddier water and have a drink of that, and that's quite interesting. I'm not sure why they did that, but they certainly like to play around in the mud, probably a bit more than the herd does, which is a bit more business-like. They have their drink and they move on. Let's turn a little bit of light onto them. Comes another one. See that fellow coming up. He's obviously had enough of mucking around in the mud, and now he wants a bit of a cleaner drink. You get a picture of the two bulls there, two youngsters there, just sort of feeling each other out, smelling, and they've clearly been horsing around if an elephant can horse. I'm not sure if an elephant can horse around. They've been elephanting around down in the drainage line, and they're still, you can see there, they're still doing it. That's quite sweet. Just like, exactly like humans. Young males just testing their strength against each other. A little bit of bullying. Oops. Nothing too serious. Bit of knob thorn in the bottom. Totally typical behavior, of course. And it all just sets out. There's not so much a hierarchy, but there absolutely is a dominance display that gets done just exactly like with humans and with most other or a lot of other mammal species. The young males test themselves against each other continually. African scops owl calling off to the left. Lovely call. These elephants will just eventually wander off into the bush. Some of them will doze during the night, others will just keep feeding. Some of the youngsters may lie down. They do sometimes lie down to sleep. Others just will sleep standing up, and sometimes they lean against termite mounds, which is quite sweet. It's difficult for an elephant to lie down for any length of time because their organs are so heavy that they tend to crush, sort of way down on them, and unless they're sort of in the right place, so i.e. standing up, right way up, they tend to be quite adversely affected. Although, that said, I heard a wonderful story once from a fellow I used to work with. He found an elephant, a big bull, lying on the ground, and he and the ranger went up to this bull and thought, well, you know, if he's dead, I'll have to report him. And as he sort of kicked the elephant in the backside, the 6-ton behemoth stood up very suddenly. He'd just been having a little doze to himself. So the ranger ran away at a great speed. It has been an interesting afternoon. We started off pretty well, I feel. We had some lovely wild dogs. Obviously it didn't end that well for Brian and I. After that the car broke, and then you had the sad news of the demise of one of the Nkuhuma pride lionesses. And I think over the next little while we're going to be seeing some very strange lion dynamics, and it's going to probably give us more questions than it is answers. And the textbooks don't talk about males killing females too often, and it is an abnormal thing, and it will be interesting to see what happens as we go forward from there. I must thank you very much for your patience. We had a dreadful morning technically, and we had an equally dreadful morning, not so much technically but mechanically, this afternoon. Eugene did an incredible job in getting our signal back up and running, and then Brent and I managed to break the cars, which was not ideal. So tomorrow morning I suspect we'll probably just have old Wendy. Jiga's not in a good way, being hospitalized. So a big thank you to you all for your questions. Thank you for hanging around when you did, and thank you for your comments. We do appreciate them, and we really appreciate those of you who've hung around and waited to see if we'd come back. Thank you to you. Big thank you to Tara and her patience in the final control, and a big thank you to Brian on camera, to Brent and Andrew, who have had a difficult afternoon. But mostly thank you to all of you. It's a beautiful evening, and I'm going to go and enjoy it now and have a bit of a relax, and we will see you tomorrow morning for the dawn safari. I'm not sure who's going to drive you then, but it'll be one of the three of us, Brent, Jamie or I. Thank you again, and we'll see you in the morning. Bye-bye.